We were made a promise with this set of expansions that the World Soul Saga would bring resolution to the sword. If you're thinking what sword, obviously that sword, the big planet-sized blade that has been lodged in Silithus for 8 years, just dangling about as a big plot hole because it didn't really get fully dealt with. Now, the War Within has obviously not dealt with the sword, but it did just give us one of the final pieces to the puzzle. The big question is, was that Sargeras' last desperate attempt to stab the world and end the planet, or was he aiming at something else? What's happened today is everything is clicked into place. It's been accelerated by Brinth and Dagran's research through the Titan archives. Viewing their recordings, of course, we learn about the World Core, a titanic construction built around the World Soul, and how the workers that were actually created to build that World Core ended up being influenced by Azeroth and eventually rebelling. Now, with all of that going on to Azeroth, you might think, how does Sargeras fit into the picture? Well, the fun thing is, we know almost exactly, and it sets up this expansion's grandest arc. Blizzard, in fact, told us via Secret Dialog added to the game 1 year ago. Some may say that Sargeras didn't do anything wrong, and I know that he certainly didn't go wrong when he chose today's sponsor.
There was such a quality of life upgrade and let you go from idea to done fast. It's Squarespace. Whenever I needed a job site to expand my team, well, guess where I went to? Squarespace. For the landing page for our game, I went to Squarespace, and that's because they make getting the job done simple, fast, cross-device, all while looking fantastic. You, of course, have got their award-winning templates that get you started off with a real strong foundation, and then design intelligence with Blueprint. Blueprint actually guides you through building your own template. It is so satisfying, and it means that if you're not a designer, well, that's okay, because they take care of it for you and they keep you on the right track. Their block-based editor makes then crafting the details of your website so simple so that you can focus on design and content. And if you want even more control, Fluid Engine does just that. It is so cool. You can granularly move things without it breaking on like an iPhone. It's so cool. And I gotta be real, even just saying this as an employer, I think that everybody should have a killer website that represents them. Number one, it's just a good creative thing for you to do. It's a way where you can try to represent yourself in the internet, and that will help you maybe hone your sell, hone your portfolio. It'll be great for jobs, all of that stuff, perhaps even your side hustle. Or if you're doing that, well, they have got e-commerce completely covered, right? They can do digital products, physical products. They'll hook up to your shipping provider. Now they support courses. They've got native video support, which can actually also be on courses, be membership videos. They do memberships. They do bookings. So if you're a hairdresser, there you go. If you're doing yoga, there you go. If you're coaching people in World of Warcraft, there you go. And the overarching point is this. They give you all the tools that you need to thrive online in one place, and they make it easy so that instead of tinkering around with things that don't move the needle, you can actually just build your site and start running your business, showing off your portfolio, whatever it may be. Now, you can go to squarespace.com/Bellular Gaming, and you can actually build your site with a free trial. There, just have fun, build your site. And when you're ready to send it live, you'll get 10% off your first purchase of a site or domain with code Bellular Gaming.
One last spiteful act. That is what we all thought Sargeras basically did when he stabbed the world, and it made a lot of sense at the time. That's because Sargeras was the big bad of this entire setting since the very first mention of demon lords in the RTS games and of course the old school manuals that shipped with them. It was beyond question that he was evil, and with a capital E. He created the Burning Legion, scoured the universe of all life. He was the most evil dude. He corrupted the Orcs, he corrupted the Eridar, he created Ner'zhul and the Scourge. All of that was done in his name. Every plot from Doomlord Kazak to Queen Ashara led back to Sargeras in some way, and his core motivation was always the same: to somehow save the universe from a darker fate through the fires of his legion, ending a life. So, whenever he stabbed our planet, it made a lot of sense. One last spiteful act. Now, at the time, players did have some other theories. People thought, what did he strike? Did he strike at Cthulhu, the old god? Was there something else at play? Battle for Azeroth then made it all seem a little obvious with the Chamber of the Heart, but something else was in fact at play. You see, in 2023, the entire plot thickened. That's when Blizzard took BlizzCon and announced the World Soul Saga. Chris Metzen got up on stage, he said that they would deal with the sword, and he also said they would deal with just what the hell all of that Titan machinery around the planet was even for in the first place. And right as Blizzard did that, they made a secret edition to World of Warcraft that gave us Secret Dialog all through the trading post. A new set of weapons was added that was themed after Sargeras, after the Titans, and actually after Xal'atath. But these were not mere cosmetics. Number one, they had some pretty neat flavor text. But far more importantly, if you transmog these to your character, and then you visited the Twilight Hermit, an ex-cultist who camps out around Silithus, well, you could speak to him and you would receive some very interesting knowledge. If you are wielding the shards of Sargeras' blade, whenever you talk to him, he will tell you this. Why did Sargeras strike this place? He was far too masterful a tactician to choose this target by chance. His crusades sought to eradicate all life from existence. Do you think his final act before being captured by the Pantheon would not be in service of that goal? Now, of course, this is something that we could read in a few different ways. I mean, first, just killing Azeroth, could that somehow eradicate all life from existence? I suppose it's not a crazy theory. That was the goal, but it doesn't exactly seem like the move of a master tactician. That implies, well, he was smart and he was maybe planning in something. And if he was a master tactician and his plan was to destroy the world by stabbing it, well, he didn't really succeed because Azeroth didn't die and life went on. Now, you have to remember that Sargeras is not some sort of demon lord. He is in fact a titan. That means he knows how the other titans work, he knows what they want, and how they shape worlds to their end. Sargeras aimed at something. That is what the NPC tells us. The NPC that had dialogue added to it the day that Blizzard announced this set of expansions. So we have this information from the Twilight Hermit, and we also have the information about the Manifold and the World Core that reframe how we see Azeroth and the Titans. This helps everything click into place, but there does need to be a bit more of a personal motive, and that is where I've got to go back to the Legion expansion. This weapon is called the Jeweled Scepter of Sargeras. It was wielded by the Legion Warlock player, and as we progressed through the expansion, we unlocked more lore for our various artifact weapons, and this entry makes it all click. I'm going to read it verbatim. Soon after the War of the Ancients, Sargeras had a vision. The Well of Eternity imploded once again, but this time, it dragged him down to the very core of Azeroth. He was there for only an instant, but in that moment he saw Azeroth's slumbering world soul, and the world soul opened one eye and gazed at the Dark Titan. He was enraptured. That is the text. So Sargeras saw the world soul. He was enraptured. He was not transfixed. Enraptured is a word that has got positive connotations, a lot closer to infatuated. Now, in 2023, Blizzard told us that Sargeras struck with purpose at that specific location, but at the time we didn't have the full picture. Of course now, through Brinth and Dagran's research, we know the details, and it explains Chris Metzen's big 2 hints that we will deal with the sword, and of course the Titan machines. Now, we've already done full lore videos on the Manifold and the World Core. I'm not just going to rehash those and waste all of our time. Instead, here is how things unfolded from Sargeras' perspective. For years beyond count, Sargeras was the champion of the Titan Pantheon, second in power only to Aman'Thul. Now, the Titans' overall goal was to bring order to the cosmos through finding world souls and creating more Titans from them. And it was Sargeras' job to end pretty much anything that stood in their way. That could in fact include countless mortals who did not fit the Titans' ordering. And this is something we've known since the Wrath of the Lich King expansion, where we ran into Algalon the Observer and he threatened to press the big reset button on the world. Sargeras' largest challenge, though, was demonkind. They hailed from the Twisting Nether and had this very annoying property where they would go back there, their souls, and they would reform after death. So Sargeras built a prison world for these demons and he moved on, but he grew exhausted, always eternally fighting them and questioning if it could ever end. But then, one very fateful day, everything would change for him. He discovered a planet that was nearly fully corrupted by old gods. The whole thing a writhing mess, and its world soul was on the very edge of full corruption. When there, he saw Nathrezim. But these Nathrezim posed as natives of the planet, and they told Sargeras a doctored version of the truth of the void, that essentially it would consume without end, that all would fall to it, and that if ever managed to corrupt a world soul, not a single thing could be done to stand in its way. Essentially, a complete end to everything. Now, Sargeras then believed that there was no way the Titans could indeed win this fight, and he decided that a new, far more extreme approach was needed. In that instant, he destroyed the planet and its world soul. He just cleft it in two, on the spot. Meanwhile, though, the Titans had actually found Azeroth. When they were there, they constructed the core way to investigate the World Soul, and when they constructed it, they discovered Azeroth was far more powerful than anything they had ever found, and they labeled her the Prime World Soul. The old gods, who of course were all over Azeroth, had damaged it, so to mend that damage and to eventually make her one of their own, a process that they call acclimation, they constructed the Manifold, a grand series of installations throughout the entire world, all designed to mend Azeroth and turn her into a Titan. And at the very center of this was the World Core, a chamber, some could say a prison, that would guard Azeroth against all others who would come for her. Then they cast a concealing shroud over Azeroth so no others could find her, and they left. And soon after they left, they confronted Sargeras. Little did they know how much Sargeras had fully turned. By this stage, he was complete in his belief of his cause. He told the Pantheon what he did to the Void Planet, and they were absolutely horrified because, from their worldview, one of these world souls was basically one of them. So this was a major betrayal. He announced, though, that there was no hope but to start his burning crusade and cleanse the universe of life. Amenthul, who I think we're learning is a little bit of an arrogant character, still tried to reason with Sargeras, even though he was doing what he was doing and probably did look like a big, fiery, evil man. He said that they had found Azeroth, that she was the Prime World Soul, and that her wakened form, of course, as a Titan, would basically give so much power to their side that their problems would be solved and they would win. Sargeras, though, did not believe his old master, and in combat he was able to destroy the entire Titan pantheon. Their physical forms were gone. At the very last moment, though, one of them, Norgannon, transported a part of their souls back to Azeroth, where they would remain for quite some time indeed. But big picture, what this represented was the Titans being gone, fully out of the picture until the Legion expansion where we met them. Of course, Sargeras didn't really know where Azeroth was, so he set out to find Azeroth and destroy her, but she was hidden behind the shroud he didn't know. Meanwhile, way back in Azeroth, the Keepers realized that they could no longer communicate with the Titans, and slowly over time things got more and more chaotic. Now, to be clear, I'm talking about likely tens, hundreds of thousands of years, maybe millions of years here. Eventually, the mortal races rose, and eventually the Kaldori, who we would call Night Elves today, began experimenting with magic. They went way too far. Their abuse of the Well of Eternity's magic, where basically the Well of Eternity was a large wound in Azeroth that bubbled up her lifeblood that was full of arcane energy. They went so crazy, so over the top with that across the cosmos, Azeroth shined out like a beacon through the Titan's veil. And Sargeras, of course, noticed this. He finally knew where Azeroth was. Sargeras then fought and lost what we call the War of the Ancients, and soon after he had that vision that we discussed earlier, where Azeroth looked at him, opened up an eye, and he became enraptured. And that is especially important, right? The eye is vital here. If you refer back to the Tauran creation myth that is called Eyes of the Earth Mother, Azeroth's eyes are referred to as great engines of creation. When she opened them, ages passed, life bloomed, intelligent life developed. It's a major part of the Tauran mythology. Now, in that mythology, her children, Elune and Anshe, were said to use her eyes to temper the elements. Now, of course, that's not literal, it is Tauran myth and allegory, but the point is very clear. Azeroth's eyes signify great power, perhaps the power of creation. So who knows what peering into one of those eyes directly would do to a mind? Of course, Azeroth is described as a prime world soul. That suggests that she is of a power level likely vastly beyond Sargeras. Unfortunately, we don't know what this did to Sargeras' psyche, but we do know that many more times he would try to claim the world. First through Aegon and Medivh, then the Orcs, then Archimonde, Ner'zhul and the Scourge. Then there was World of Warcraft's first expansion, the Burning Crusade, which represented yet another failed attempt, but with the Legion expansion, we finally defeated the Burning Legion, and we imprisoned Sargeras, but of course not before his sword found its mark. And I say found its mark because the Twilight Hermit tells us Sargeras was a master tactician, and he struck where he did very much on purpose. So, now you know all the information you need to know. You now know things from Sargeras' perspective. So let's bring this home all into one and try to work out what went on. The main question is this: did Sargeras, a being enraptured by Azeroth, actually try to kill her? If I think back to what the Hermit said, we can assume that his desire still was to wipe out all life. Now, if you examine Silithus, it's clear that he struck at one of the most important locations of the Manifold. The Manifold is that network of Titan machines strewn across Azeroth. Particularly, he struck at the Chamber of Heart. Now, of course, the Chamber of Heart was our main base of operations during the Battle for Azeroth expansion, and it actually helps tie everything we're going to discuss today together. You see, it's through that chamber that we use the Manifold's various machines like the Forge of Origination and the Engine of Nalaksha to destroy N'Zoth at the very end of the BFA expansion. But there's another connection, a bit of mystery that ties it to the War Within. And it's this: whenever we recruited Keeper Ra to our cause, he went to the Chamber of Heart, but he was surprised. Ra had no idea that the chamber existed, but he immediately recognized that the chamber was made by Arcadis. To be clear, what that means is pretty much like this. Arcadis is the guy who led the construction of just about all of the major Titan stuff that we saw, including the very top secret stuff, the sort of command and control stuff like the Chamber of Heart. He made Dornagal, he was involved in making the Coreway and the World Core, all of those things. We now know that Sargeras struck at one of the most secret installations that Arcadis built. Of course, Arcadis has got a hell of a backstory with Tyr. Tyr being one of the characters who we basically restored during the Dragonflight expansion. I think you can see then how these things are all tying together. Now that we have the full archive, it's very obvious that he put all of those things in there so that we would one day discover the Manifold and discover the World Core. Two things controlled, of course, by the likes of the Chamber of Heart, the very thing that Sargeras struck. So did Sargeras want to kill Azeroth? Or did he want to destroy the machines that were locking her up and controlling her and trying to change her into a Titan? The Titans, of course, being Sargeras' enemy. That absolutely seems like the most credible theory to me, and there are two main motivations there. One, he wants to free Azeroth in some way because of whatever impact she had on him when he gazed into her eye. The other one is a lot more bitter, that in his moment of defeat, when he realized he could not destroy Azeroth, he perhaps thought the next best option was to strike in the one place that would wrestle her from the Titan's grasp, the Chamber of Heart, the main command and control room. And with that, we understand Sargeras' motives more. We understand what the Twilight Hermit meant when he said that he struck with intent. We actually understand what network of machinery he attacked and damaged. One thing is for sure, though, we are absolutely going to see Sargeras again in The Last Titan. But before then, there's a whole other expansion called Midnight. It is going to have some absolutely insane light and void stuff, and the good news is, we did an entire lore deep dive into it that you can watch right next.